This conference will now be recorded.
Hi guys, good morning everyone. Yeah, let me start the session. Give me a minute. Are you able to see my screen, guys? Yep. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so let us start with a quick recap of the previous session. So we started with data loading part. Okay, so we have the data in S3, which is Amazon's object storage, and how to load the data into your Snowflake. So there are two methods actually. So we have discussed this part using the user credentials. So there is a copy into command where you need to pass user credentials of AWS who is already having access to S3, right? So we have, for this, we have created a user, okay? And we have given a policy to access S3, right? And then we have taken the access key and secret access key, both the values, and we have used that in the copy into command. See here. So we have used copy into employee from this particular location. So this is my S3 location actually. So if you see my S3 location, so this is my bucket. In this bucket, I have a subfolder. So in this subfolder, I have multiple other subfolders. So let's say I want to load from this particular folder. So I'll go to that particular folder and give that particular file name here if I want. Okay. So, and I mentioned the credentials so that how Snowflake assures to AWS that you have the read access on S3. So that is through your user credentials. Because the user I have created is already having access to S3, that credentials I'm using it here, right? So we have loaded the data into our employee table successfully, right? So we have seen the data, which is a CSV file. Now you are seeing the data into your employee table. Okay. So this is the first approach. Okay. This is the first approach in this diagram. And there is another mechanism to authenticate to S3. So why we are going for the second mechanism here? Okay. So the problem here is you are exposing the secret information here. Okay. So this is very sensitive information. If this is exposed to some third-party people, okay. So let's say I have uploaded this to a GitHub code. I mean to show to someone else. So just I have uploaded to a public repository in the GitHub. So there are some hacker programs which will continuously scanning for this kind of key ID and secret access, right? So if they get access to these values, they can use, I mean, they can configure these values in their account. Maybe you can do it from multiple ways. Okay, so you can have a machine and configure there, and you can use my services, my AWS services. So that is the problem with this. Okay, so we have always to make sure that we should not expose these credentials in this particular approach. Okay, so that is the reason we are going to use another concept called storage integration. Okay, storage integration. So here we are using a concept called role. Okay, in AWS role. Okay, so what is AWS role here? Similar to your Snowflake role, this AWS role is set of policies. Let's say I want access to S3, so I give S3 full access. So this is a policy, right? And this is a role. So I will assign this particular policy to this role. And this role will be used in the storage integration. Okay. So what is the storage integration object? I'll tell you. Okay. So this role is a set of privileges again. Like your user is having access to S3. So role will have an access to S3 and that role I'll use it here. Okay. So let's see how to create this role first. Okay. how to create a role first, and then we'll integrate that in the storage integration from Snowflake. Okay, so the process that I'm going to do it now is not the responsibility of the developer. Okay, so it is the responsibility of AWS administrator and your Snowflake administrator to set up this connection. So in the same way, when you're using these credentials, so to get these credentials, you don't need to do anything. Generally, there will be a separate administrator who is performing these tasks and sharing the credentials to you. Okay, so you don't have generally access to get these credentials and all. Okay, so now let us discuss how to create a role in AWS. Okay, so let's go back to AWS console, and in the services, to create user, which service we have used to create a user? What is the service name? The administrative service name here. IAM, right? Identity access management here. The same way, similar way, I can use the IAM to create a role here. Right? So previously we have created a user, right? So SF user, and we got these credentials, right? Now I'm going to create role. Okay, so now I'll click on this create role, right? Here, while choosing this trusted entity type, I am going to choose another AWS service here. So the second part, okay? So this allows third party to perform actions in this account. So what is the third party? Is Snowflake here. Okay, so because you need to establish the connection between AWS S3 and Snowflake. Philip, can you go on mute, please? Yeah. So I'm now accessing this this particular trusted entity. Okay, AWS account, right? So it is saying the third party to perform actions in this account. So the third party is your AWS, sorry, your Snowflake. Okay. So for a third party, generally you'll have some numbers like what is the third party account ID and external ID, right? So now, in order to get those values, initially you need to give a dummy value. Okay. So just click on another AWS account here, and here actually you need to pass the Snowflake account number. Okay. But you don't have that Snowflake account number available currently. So you'll get that after creating the storage integration, that number. Okay. So currently I don't have any number. So I'll give my own account ID number, the dummy number here. Okay. So go here, copy this. So this is the account number. Generally you'll get it from the root. Okay. 0918 and all. Okay. So just give this number here. And also, this is for extra security purpose, external ID when some third party is communicating with AWS. Okay. So now I'll give a dummy value like 4 zeros here. Okay. Just I'm giving a dummy value. So this value should be replaced by the original values from Snowflake. Okay. So currently I'm giving dummy values here, and I'm going to next. Here you'll get the policies. So while creating the users, AWS users also, you have some policies here, right? So same way, while creating the role, instead of user, you're creating a role and you're giving that particular policy to the role. So go to S3 full access, set this policy. Okay, maybe this because of the space. Yeah. So I'm giving full access, read and write access. Okay. Now go to next. Okay, you see this JSON here. So this is called JSON format. So here it is seeing AWS account ID. You are seeing AWS account ID and external ID, right? So these values we should get it from Snowflake again and edit this. So currently I'm not editing this. Just give the role name. So this is to S3 to SF. The role name is S3 to SF. Okay. So I'll give the description. This role is created for accessing S3 from Snowflake. Okay, just create the role. Okay, so instead of creating a user, I have created the role. Okay, I have created the role here. So just click on this role, you'll get one number, ARN number. Just copy this. Okay, so all this process that I am telling is the responsibility of your AWS administrator. Okay. What do you mean by other entity types? Check other entity type. You mean to say while creating the role, okay, yeah. So that also we'll discuss during the Python session actually. So while creating the role, when you say create a role, so let's say you have a service called EC2. Okay, it's a Linux machine in Linux machine that is created in AWS. And EC2 and S3 want to communicate with each other. So in our case, your S3 and Snowflake are communicating with each other. So I have created a third party entity type. But when S3 and there is another service called EC2. EC2 is a virtual machine in your AWS. So both belongs to your AWS account only, same account. So in that case, you need to choose the first AWS service. So allow AWS services like EC2, Lambda, or others to perform actions in this account. So when two AWS services are communicating, you will choose this particular AWS entity type. Okay. And when it is going for third party, or the AWS account itself is different, right? So let's say you have an AWS account and I have an AWS account. So you want to access my S3 from your AWS account. So in that case, you'll go for this third party thing. So here we for Snowflake, we'll use this. Okay. So when two services from the AWS want to communicate, you choose the first one. Otherwise, you can choose the third party one. Okay. So now we have created a role base, and I have that role ARN copied. So let us go back to the data loading part. Right. So here I am telling we are going to create a separate entity called storage integration. Right. So this is the syntax for creating storage integration. Okay. Now see how the syntax looks like. Create or replace storage integration, and you'll give some name for that. Okay. So it is coming from S3. So I am giving AWS S3 source data. And I am giving type equal to external stage because the data is coming from my external cloud system. Okay. So that is the reason I am giving type equal to external stage here. And who is the storage provider? It is S3. Okay. Let's say you are using Azure. Maybe you use Blob here. If you're using Google Cloud, you'll use some other like GCS here. Okay. So in AWS, the service is called S3. Okay. So that's the reason the storage provider is S3 here. Now, to which AWS account you want to connect to? So that will be determined by the role I have created. So here, I told you just copy that ARN that you have created here. So I have created a role. I have created a role S3 to SF and copy this particular role ARN and give that here. Okay, give that here. And enable equal to true, I'll tell you later. And here in the storage allowed locations, let's say you have created multiple buckets in your S3, right? I have 3 buckets in my S3 now, but I only want to access one bucket. I don't want to access all the other 2 buckets. So let's say one bucket is created for data engineering team, other bucket is created for data science team, other bucket is created for some reporting team. So we don't want to touch these buckets. So I want to give access to only this particular bucket. So in that case, I'll give storage allowed locations equal to that particular bucket name here. Okay, so this is the data lake bucket. Just I'm giving access to here, right? So now I'll create this in my Snowflake account. Okay, right? So I'm going to create this in my Snowflake account. So how I'm getting this role ARN? So generally the AWS administrator will provide you this role ARN. Okay. Now to create a storage integration, definitely you should be an account admin. Okay. No other role is allowed to create storage integration unless you explicitly grant that permission. Okay. So create or replace storage integration. This is the syntax. So if you use other role, it will not allow you to create. Okay. Let us create with sysadmin. Let us try to do that. It will not allow you because I told you your account admin have the privileges of sysadmin, security admin, and also some extra privilege. So that extra privilege is one of the extra privileges creating the storage integration. Okay. So now I am creating the storage integration with account admin role. Okay. Okay, so clear guys, the two steps what we have done. First, we have created an AWS role which is having access to S3. In step 1, create AWS role by granting access to S3, right? And in the second point, create storage integration by using the role ARN created in step 1. So these are the two things that we have performed. So generally this is done by your AWS admin in the real time, and this is done by your Snowflake admin, right? This is done by your Snowflake admin here. Now the third step is you need to, I told you we have given dummy values for your role, right? So now you need to give the actual values in the role. So to do that, first you need to again go back to IAM, Identity Access Management. Roles. Now go to this trust relationships and you have this JSON here. So edit this JSON and get the actual value for this account ID and external ID. So how you will get that? So you go back to Snowflake here and do this part. Describe integration, okay, AWS S3 source data. So if you describe this integration in Snowflake, you'll get the actual values from Snowflake. Okay, so see here, this is the external ID. I'm copying it here. External ID, and here account ID from Snowflake. So see here, this 790265 number is belongs to Snowflake. Okay, so just that particular value you need to copy here. So take this value and put it here in this particular AWS role ARN, and take the external ID and put it here. Okay, so now you are good with establishing a connection between your Snowflake and AWS using the storage integration. Okay, so in the third step, what we have done, replace the AWS account ID and external ID for the role created in step 1. So all these tasks are performed by your administrator. As a developer, we are not going to touch this. Okay, these 3 steps. Okay, now how I am going to use this storage integration to copy the data into my particular table. So see here, same copy into command. Previously we used credentials, right? Now I am going to use this particular storage integration, right? So instead of credentials, I will remove this. Simply I will say storage underscore integration equal to this particular value. Okay, right? So let me recreate this. Okay, so let's give a different file name here because we already copied employee data. Okay, so let me give a different file name. So what is the path here? Raw data EMP, right? Now let us copy this particular file. Looks like there is a space here. Let me give it in double quotes. There is some question. why we have to create storage integration in the Snowflake. Is it like SSL key store authentication? Yeah, it is to authenticate your S3 from Snowflake. Okay, so you need to say that you have access to S3 from Snowflake, right? So how you are doing that? The first method is using the user credentials that we have discussed. But this has a problem because you are exposing these credentials in your code, right? So that's the reason I'm going for the second approach here. So this is the best practice that we follow in the real time. Okay, so let's copy this particular file now. Okay, because of these spaces, we are having some problem here. Let me do one thing. Let us copy another file here into S3. Okay, in data, right? Yeah, this file I'll make it 200 series, the employee IDs, so that we have copied from using storage integration. Okay. Because already the old file is having the same data. I'm changing some data here. Okay. Some file name, random file name, emb file is there. I'm uploading that file. August 19. Okay. I'll upload this file here. I'll go here. I'll change this. emp_file_. Let me copy this now. So it is copied this particular file. See here, the data is loaded here. Now, if you query the employee table, start, you have 8 rows, 4 rows from the first copied command, this 100 series, right? So from where you are getting this particular copy, this particular file, emp data, right? And this next set of rows that you are getting from the storage integration part. Okay, and this is the best method because you're not exposing any sensitive information in the copy into command here. Okay, any question, guys? Yeah. So this is the process for creating the storage integration and copying the database. And the process I have explained is purely done by your administrator. You are not involved in it. You are provided with your storage integration name. You are supposed to use that name in the copy into command. Okay. So as a developer, we are confined to here only, but you need to know the process also. Okay. So clear now? Are any questions, guys? Yeah, you can ask any question. No problem.
So how is this method secure?
Because you're not exposing this sensitive information. Even if someone knows this name, they don't get anything. But here, if you get these values, I'll show you, like by using these values what you can do. Okay, when we discuss about Python programming, so if I get these values, I can use these credentials and use your AWS account. Let's say you have created this AWS account and you have shared these credentials with me. So from my machine, I can use your resources.
But with the storage method, if they have the storage method, can't they do the same thing?
No. So this just a name, the identifier I have given, but everything is hidden here. Everything is hidden here. Even if they don't, if they know these numbers also, that doesn't. I mean, that doesn't have any problem. So it's a name, identifier name. Any other questions, guys?
You know, if we have multiple file in the same location, so can
Right.
we load
So we
all
can
the
copy that. Yes, we can do that. Okay. So now, yeah, we are going to discuss that also. So if you give a directory, here, instead of mentioning the file name, right? So I am going to give the directory. So what it does here, it picks all the file names available in your employee folder. Okay, right. So it has picked these two files. But see here, did you observe something? So it picked this file and this file, but it did not pick EMP data and EMP pipe. What's the reason for that? So it only picked these two files now when I run the copy into command with EMP slash, right? So what is the reason for that?
Maybe
So
the
someone
file
asked,
is not equal to CSV or something.
no. Yeah, it's not that case. Those files are already processed here. So someone asked whether it processed the duplicate files, then it's no. The copy to command does not process already processed file with the same name again into the same table from the same location. So EMP data is processed here and EMP pipe August is processed here. So that is the reason it has picked the other two files here. Okay, so generally the copy to command does not pick your duplicate files for reprocessing. So if you want to reprocess it, there is an option I'll tell you later. But currently, if you directly use the copy to command, it will not reprocess the same file again here. Okay, so if you want to copy multiple files, just give the directory name and keep the slash here. Okay, clear guys? Are any questions? You might be having so many questions because the copy into command have a lot of options. How to reprocess the same file, how to fix the errors and reload the file. If so you might get one question. Let's say my content of the file has changed. Let's say this content of the file has changed, but still I have uploaded that file there with the same name. So what happens? So how to process the same data? I mean, how to process the same file with different data, right? So for that, you have another option called force equal to true. Okay. So see here, I am running this command. So it will say 0 files processed. So the reason is this file is already processed here. Okay. Now, if let's say, let us assume this particular file content has changed. I want to reprocess this again. So for that, you need to give force equal to true, so that it can reprocess the same file again. Okay, so for that you need to put a semicolon here. See here, so this particular file is loaded again if you give force equal to true. So force equal to is true for reprocessing the same file. Maybe it is having same data or different data. It doesn't matter. Clear? Okay. So this process looks a little bit when it takes some time to digest these things and all. Everything is clearly mentioned in the AWS documentation. The process I have told you, right? So clearly it is mentioned in the AWS documentation. Okay. So create a storage integration in Snowflake. Okay. So here there are multiple options. Let's go back to this. Yeah, this one. Okay, you have multiple options. See, this is the first option. Configure a storage integration object to delegate authentication responsibility for external cloud storage to a Snowflake identity access management entity. So we highly recommend this option, which avoids the need to supply AWS IAM credentials when creating stages or loading data. So this is the recommended option by Snowflake here. Okay, so if you see the diagram here, option 1 that we have discussed here is this. So you have S3 bucket. So you have a storage integration object, which is delegating the responsibility of authenticating to S3. Okay, so I'm not using any credentials here. Okay, so this is the one we have discussed just now. Okay, so clearly they mentioned all the steps here. Okay, So we have discussed this configure access permissions for S3 bucket, create the IAM role in AWS. Okay, this is not needed actually, it's optional. Create the IAM role, create a cloud storage integration, retrieve the AWS IAM user for your Snowflake account, and grant the IAM user permission to access bucket. So these things we have done actually. Okay, so clearly with the screenshots they have mentioned here. Okay, so what we need to do. Okay, so if you want to refer here also, you can give it. So they mentioned like all zeros and these dummy values. So this is the old console actually, another AWS account. They mentioned everything here. Okay, so this is option 1, and the option, the other thing we have used is this one. So the second option is deprecated, we are not using anymore. The third option we have used already, right? So use the credentials. Go to IAM, create a user. So we have given programmatic access, if you remember, and we have given S3 a Snowflake access, and then you'll get the credentials here. And they did not give any diagram for this, but yeah, so this is the option we have discussed. Okay, that is your credentials option. So clear guys, are any questions here in these two paths that we have used? No questions? Okay. So now we entered into data ingestion part. So the process that we are discussing is called bulk loading. So whenever you use the copy into command, it is called bulk loading. Okay. So what is this bulk loading? Is, let's say you have started your project, you have started a migration project. Okay. So let us assume your data warehouse is running on Teradata. Maybe Teradata is another data warehouse, Teradata Redshift. Now you have all the historical data, right? You have all the historical data. Now you want to migrate it into Snowflake. And for Teradata, there could be some source systems, like Postgres is the source system, let us assume. Right? So currently your project is this, from Postgres source, it is going to Teradata, and you're doing analytics here on Teradata. Now your team has decided to migrate from Teradata to Snowflake, right? So now you have a lot of historical data. Let's say this project is running since last 5 years. So you have already a lot of historical data in this Teradata target itself. So to migrate these huge volumes of data from your target to target, we can go for bulk loading. Okay, so bulk loading indicates your data volume is huge and you want to load the data into Snowflake. So we go for bulk loading here. Okay, so not only in this case, let's say you want to move the data from Postgres to Snowflake. Let's say you're working with a separate project, I mean initial project. So your source is Postgres and your target is Snowflake directly. So it's not a migration project. You're directly starting with Snowflake. So in this case also, your Postgres might be having maybe 2 or 3 years of data. So to migrate from that, to copy that from data from your Postgres to Snowflake in the first initial phase, so you can also use this bulk loading. Okay. So in these two cases, this bulk loading comes into picture, and this bulk loading is done through your copy into command here. So when you use copy into command, you can simply say it is bulk loading process. Okay, and you might get a doubt like how we will execute in the real time this copy into commands, right? So generally we'll put it into a scheduler. Okay, we'll put it in a script and we'll schedule it through a scheduler here. Okay, so generally we do that, right? There are other processes to load the data actually, bulk loading and continuous loading. Okay, so actually I'm stopping here today because it takes some time to digest this topic. Okay, so just try to do this in your account. You'll definitely be getting some problems maybe. Okay, because in the previous sessions, previous batches, I observed that. So try to do this and establish the connection to Snowflake. Try to load the data. If you just take this as an assignment, the same thing which I have done this. Okay, so if you're facing some issues, let me know in tomorrow's session. Okay. Okay, guys. So just I'm closing it early today, because this process just you repeat it on your own. So that this is the first step for the data ingestion. So you should complete this. Okay. So let us meet tomorrow then we'll discuss. Okay. Thank you guys.
Thank you.